The moment your eyes snap open, the first thing you notice is the stench. It is thick and inescapable, hanging in the air like a physical force pressing down on your chest. You try to breathe shallowly, but the foulness invades your nostrils anyway. The room is dim, not because it lacks windows, but because the glass is smeared with filth. The wooden floor beneath your feet is stained and sticky. You rise barefoot, only to feel something warm and wet seep between your toes. You recoil instinctively, but there is no escape. Every step you take brings you closer to another puddle, another stain, another sickening pile left behind by someone who had no choice. You fling open the door to the street, desperate for fresh air. But what greets you is worse. The gutters are overflowing with human waste. Flies buzz in dense clouds. Children play just feet away from it all, their faces crusted with grime, their skin marked by lesions. You gag, overwhelmed. You look down the street and see makeshift stalls selling food. Flies swarm the produce. The meat glistens under the sun, but not with freshness. A man relieves himself in the alley beside you, without flinching, without shame. No one bats an eye. It is normal here. This is not a dystopian future. This is a world where the toilet was never invented. The year is 2047, and through the marvel of quantum tunneling and advanced neural anchoring, you have become the first human to test a controversial new form of time-bound interdimensional immersion. The idea was to experience alternative Earths, versions of our planet where just one thing changed. The point was to observe, learn, report. But what they did not tell you was how real it would feel. Not just the sights, but the smells, the heat, the illness. You have not merely traveled through time or across worlds. You are living fully in this reality now. And this one is not kind. In this version of Earth, no one ever conceived of a device to separate human beings from their own waste. The concept of a toilet in all its forms, be it a ceramic bowl, a chamber pot, or a latrine, was never born. Cultures rose and fell, but none developed proper sanitation. Plumbing never existed. Waste management, as we know it, was never even imagined. The result: a world that looks human but feels entirely alien. Civilization, as you once knew it, evolved in a state of constant exposure to filth, disease, and bodily functions made public. The dignity of privacy is gone. The safety of clean water is gone. The ability to flush away illness, decay, and evidence of life's messiest truths. It never arrived. You walk through the slums of a major city, though no one here calls it that. It is just the district. Most dwellings are stacked together like rotting teeth in a crumbling jaw. The streets below are brown with runoff. and the rain only spreads it further, never washing anything clean. There are no sewage systems, no underground networks, no septic tanks. Waste is either dumped into rivers, tossed behind homes, or simply left where it falls. People have adapted, but not in the way you hoped. Their tolerance for the unsanitary has grown, but their health has withered. Nearly everyone you pass is coughing. Open wounds fester without treatment. Children die young, and the old are rare. Hospitals are more like holding centers. Medicine exists, but it constantly fails, outpaced by infection after infection. You try to find somewhere quiet to sit and process the horror of this place, but even the public benches are slick with grime. There is no safe place to rest. The odor clings to you, coating your clothes, embedding itself in your hair and skin. It is not just offensive, it is an attack on your sense of self. You cannot eat, you cannot breathe freely, you cannot sleep. You realize, with a deep, primal fear, that you will never get clean here. You have left behind the safety of sanitized civilization and entered a realm that humanity should have outgrown centuries ago, but never did. And yet, this is not a nightmare. It is reality. Reality. And for the next 10 chapters, you will see exactly why you will not survive it. From plagues bred in puddles to societal collapse fueled by rot, from the loss of technology to the breakdown of decency, you are about to witness how one missing invention could doom the entire human race. There is no flushing away this experience. There is no escaping the consequence of unchecked humanity. Welcome to the world that toilets forgot. But to truly understand why you will not survive here, we need to go back to where it all began, to the first moments civilization tried to settle, gather, and grow, all without ever solving what to do with its waste. The year now rewinds before your eyes. Brick buildings crumble backward into piles of sun-baked clay. Towering structures vanish beneath layers of soil. Metal disappears. Streets become dirt paths. Humanity retreats from modernity until you find yourself in the cradle of early civilization. You stand barefoot on the outskirts of a dense settlement, no larger than a village, but it is one of the first, perhaps Sumerian in spirit. But this is not the Sumer you knew from textbooks. This is a divergent world. The sun bears down hard on the earth, which is cracked and dusted with ash from a nearby cooking fire. The huts around you are close together, built from straw and mud, pressed into shape by hand. Now brittle from the heat, there is no wind, just the low hum of flies. You take a step toward the village and stop abruptly. The smell, it is everywhere. It is not simply foul, it is a warning. Your instincts scream at you not to move forward. But you push through, covering your mouth with the sleeve of your tunic. The ground is uneven beneath your feet, not from roots or rocks, but from human waste. It is scattered across the edges of the path, some old and gray, hardened by sun, some freshly deposited, still glistening. There is no designated space, no hole, no strategy. Men, women, children, all simply walk to the edges of the village or behind their huts and squat. This is not an emergency. This is normal, and it is dangerous. As you approach the center of the village, the consequences become obvious. Small children have bloated bellies and dark circles under their eyes. Their arms are thin, their knees scabbed. They scratch constantly, trying to rid themselves of the insects that swarm them day and night. A woman coughs violently nearby, holding a cloth to her mouth. When she pulls it away, it is streaked with red. A child plays nearby, splashing a stick in a puddle of water that runs dark brown. You realize, with a sinking feeling, that there is no difference here between what is sacred and what is contaminated. Water, the source of life, is poisoned daily. They drink it anyway. They have to. You pass what looks like a gathering space. A few men crouch around a fire, talking softly in a language you can almost understand. Their feet are blackened from walking barefoot through their own waste. They cough too, though less than the others. You sense they are the elders, or what passes for elders, in this place where life is brutal and short. Behind them is a large pit used for cooking, and next to it, no more than 10 paces away, is a heap of excrement. There is no separation, no division between life and waste. What goes in and what comes out mingle freely. This is not just unsanitary. It is civilization on the edge of collapse. You try to imagine how they survive at all. They do not farm the way you would expect. Their fields are too close to the dwellings, too near to the contamination. Crops grow crooked, stunted, or not at all. You see more scavenging than planting, more praying than planning. Rituals are performed not to give thanks, but to ward off the spirits of disease, which they believe to be curses sent from the gods. In truth, they are simply the consequences of living without boundaries. Their gods are blind to bacteria. Their rituals cannot cure dysentery. You hear cries and follow them to a nearby hut. Inside, a man lies convulsing on a mat of woven reeds. His face is drenched in sweat, his lips cracked and bleeding. The smell is overpowering. Buckets of water sit nearby, untouched. A woman is trying to sponge his forehead with a damp cloth. She whispers to him between sobs, "You cannot help him. No one can. This is life here. The sick lie still. The living bury them quickly, and the cycle continues." You realize with a sudden surge of horror that you are just as vulnerable. Every step you take exposes you to microscopic threats. You try not to touch your face, try not to breathe deeply, but it is useless. The air itself is thick with particles of decay. You remember the basics of sanitation, the lessons taught in school, the diagrams of sewer systems and indoor plumbing, but none of that exists here. It never did. The very concept of a toilet was never born. Civilization formed on a foundation of filth. No wonder it remains so small, so scattered, so fragile. You watch as a man hauls a clay pot to a stream just outside the village. He lowers it into the water, fills it carefully, and begins his return. You follow the trail backward and notice how many villagers use that same stream as a toilet. Downriver, but not far enough. You know what that means. The same water that carries waste is used for cooking, bathing, and drinking. No filtration, no boiling, no safeguards. It is a roulette of infection every single day. Even the air carries sickness. Flies swarm everything. You swat at your arms and neck, but they keep coming. They land on open sores, then buzz away to land on food. You see this happening all around you and realize the villagers are desensitized. They no longer flinch. They no longer notice. What horrifies you is invisible to them. Their immune systems are stronger, in some ways, hardened by constant exposure. But the price is high. They die in infancy. They die young. They live short, painful lives defined by discomfort and filth. And they never question why. You wonder how many brilliant minds have been lost in places like this. How many potential inventors, healers, leaders never reached adulthood because they succumbed to a disease that could have been prevented with a simple hole in the ground and a bucket of lime. You try to imagine what this world might have become if it had solved this one basic problem early on. But it did not. It never did. And so, for thousands of years, human progress has limped forward with sewage clinging to its heels. You cannot eat. You cannot drink. You can barely breathe. You try to convince yourself that it will get better, that maybe, somewhere, someone figured out a way to rise above this. But the truth is already setting in. Without toilets, without sanitation, there is no true civilization. There is only survival, mate. And not even that for long. But survival becomes nearly impossible when the invisible killers begin to spread. The microscopic invaders that thrive in filth and multiply with every contaminated drop. In the next place you visit, you will not just see disease. You will feel it growing inside you. You wake up, gasping. The night had offered no refuge. You had managed to fall asleep out of sheer exhaustion, but your body jolts awake, aching and drenched in sweat. You feel a stabbing pain in your abdomen and a strange wetness beneath you. You sit up slowly and look down. Your legs are streaked with something dark and foul. Your stomach turns as you realize your own body has betrayed you. In this world, diarrhea is not just a symptom, it is a warning, a prelude to death. You stumble outside, clutching your midsection. The village you had observed yesterday is already stirring, though no one seems alarmed by your condition. People here see it every day. In fact, several others are bent over or lying near the same water source, similarly stricken. The outbreak has begun. You don't know if it was cholera, typhoid, rotavirus, or something more ancient and mutated, but you know it was inevitable. In a place where human waste touches every surface, every drop of water, and every set of hands, disease moves faster than thought, and now it's inside you. You try to find a healer. A hut with herbs, perhaps. A person who still believes they can fight the inevitable, but they're overwhelmed. You find one woman who seems to be treating the sick with boiling water and crushed leaves, trying to purify fluids, but her hands tremble with fatigue. Her clothes are stained with blood and vomit. She shakes her head before you can even speak, her eyes silently saying what her mouth no longer bothers to utter. You're too late. You collapse beside a tree, too weak to stand. And while your body fights to purge the invader within, you observe the chaos unraveling around you. People are beginning to die, fast. Children slump where they stood. Their lips turn blue. Adults drop beside them, clutching their stomachs and howling. The villagers are used to death, but not like this. Not in numbers, this high, this quickly. You watch as two boys begin digging shallow graves with their bare hands. There are too many to bury properly. Word spreads of entire neighboring villages falling silent overnight. Trade routes close. Animals wander freely, unclaimed by owners too weak to care. Dogs fight over corpses. The flies are thicker now, bloated from their constant feast, and still the source of it all seeps through the ground, runs through the streams, and festers on every surface. There are no gloves, no soap, no system of quarantine. You realize that in a world without toilets, pandemics are not rare occurrences. They are the rhythm of life. And this isn't just historical. Your quantum tether begins to shift timelines again, snapping you forward. Your surroundings change. Thatched huts are replaced with slums made of sheet metal and tarp. The technology is slightly more advanced, but the problem remains. This is a Megacity in the year 2025. A parallel Earth where toilets were never invented, even in the modern era. Skyscrapers still reach into the sky, but between them are vast neighborhoods drowning in excrement. The population is staggering. So is the smell. Emergency sirens wail in the distance. You move toward them, navigating narrow alleys that are wet with more than just rain. There are signs printed with warnings about the outbreak. Contagion zone. Do not touch surfaces. Boil all water. But no one can obey them. There is no safe water, no clean container. People drink from plastic bags filled with brown liquid. Some just kneel and drink directly from the curb. They are dying faster than they can be warned. You arrive at what used to be a hospital. The ground outside is lined with makeshift cots, bamboo poles with fabric stretched across. Hundreds lie there, writhing in pain. Many are silent, already gone. Volunteers move among them, spraying what appears to be disinfectant. But it does little. The bacteria are too many. The mutations too strong. Without even the most basic system of human waste control, the diseases evolve unchecked. Antibiotics are no match. You overhear one exhausted medic whisper, "They've gone septic faster than any model predicted." It's inside their blood within hours. Inside the hospital is worse. You push through the doors and nearly collapse from the smell. Every room is over capacity. Hallways are filled with gurneys. 4 bags hang from broken fixtures, dripping slowly into cold arms. Nurses wear scarves soaked in vinegar over their mouths, a futile attempt at filtration. The infection has already spread to most of them. Even the doctors look pale, sweaty, sick. They can't keep going. You watch as one collapses mid-sentence, cracking his head on the tiles. No one can help him. They are too busy trying to prevent the next death and failing. A screen in the lobby flashes updates. The outbreak has crossed oceans. Countries are shutting down borders. The World Health Organization, what remains of it, has declared a global sanitation emergency, but there is nothing to enforce. You begin to understand this is not one disease. It is all of them. The entire microbial world has been given a breeding ground of endless feces and no filtration. The result is a living planet that is hostile to humans from the inside out. You try to escape the hospital, stumbling back into the street. People are looting, not for luxury goods, but for bleach, for water, for anything that can make a child's fever drop. Entire apartment buildings are marked with red paint, the international symbol for contaminated dwellings. You pass one where every window has been shattered outward. Inside, it is quiet. No one left alive. And then, as you stagger past a fire barrel for warmth, you meet a man. He is covered in rags, but his eyes are sharp. He recognizes you as an outsider. You don't know how. Maybe the way you walk. Maybe the way you flinch at the smell. He beckons you toward a tent with walls made of tarps and blankets. You follow, desperate for answers. Inside, he tells you a story. Once, he says, humanity was given the chance to separate itself from its waste, to hide it, control it, manage it. But that idea was never born. Instead, cities grew faster than their filth could be buried. And now, the filth has won. You ask him how long he thinks the world has left. He doesn't answer. He only gestures to the sky. And you realize even the air is starting to turn. Clouds of disease hover over the slums, carried by trade winds. Globalization, even in this broken timeline, still spread people and what came out of them around the world. And now, there is no place left untouched. You clutch your stomach again. The pain is returning. Worse this time, and deeper. You understand now that there is no safety here. Not in the past. Not in the future. Not anywhere in a world where toilets never came to be. Death begins at the source. And without a system to contain it, there is no end to it. And as the bodies begin to pile up, and the sickness refuses to stop, another truth becomes clear. Even if you survive the disease, you will not survive the society it leaves behind, because the cities of this world are not places of progress. They are monuments to rot. The moment you re-emerge from the fog of sickness, you realize something crucial has changed. You are no longer in the slums. Your environment has shifted. Towering structures rise into the smoky sky, built from gleaming glass and steel, their height piercing the clouds. You're in a metropolis, a pinnacle of this world's version of human civilization. From a distance, it almost looks like home. But as you draw closer, the illusion disintegrates. The streets are wide, but they do not breathe. They do not move. The traffic is gone, the sidewalks empty, and the buildings, though intact, feel abandoned. You step into a main thoroughfare. The silence is suffocating. It is not the silence of peace, but of paralysis. A thick layer of grime covers everything. Windows, benches, traffic lights. The smell returns, stronger than before. Rot mixed with metal. Decay clinging to concrete. Your footsteps echo, but that echo is not returned by life. You peer into a storefront, a former cafe. Its chairs overturned, dishes still on the tables. Mold crawls along the walls. Rats dart across the counter. In the back, a bathroom door hangs ajar. Inside, there is no toilet. Just a bucket in the corner, overfull and congealed with dark matter. You recoil and slam the door shut, heart pounding. In this world, even modernity could not escape the primitive. You push onward and find yourself in a residential zone. Towers of apartments rise above you, their sides covered in stains running like veins down the walls. Every balcony is cluttered with containers, buckets, bottles, makeshift vessels. You realize they're being used as personal waste dumps. Without toilets, every resident had to improvise. But where does it all go? You step into one of the buildings, pressing your hand against a panel that used to control automated access. It sparks, but doesn't respond. The interior lobby is pitch dark. You hear the buzzing of insects before you see them. A soft squelch beneath your shoe confirms it. Feces on the floor. Old, yes, but layered. As you ascend the staircase, each level grows more unbearable. The stench intensifies. On the third floor, a hallway wall has collapsed outward, exposing a trail of human waste cascading from buckets down to the street below. A waterfall of civilization's failure. You enter one of the apartments, carefully pushing the door open with your elbow. Inside, the furniture is minimal. Most of it moved to the center of the room. The corners are smeared with human waste. So are the kitchen counters. The occupants had no choice. During citywide lockdowns caused by disease outbreaks, residents were sealed in 4 weeks, with no toilets, no plumbing, and no relief. Their homes became prisons filled with their own filth. Many died inside. You find a curled shape on the floor beneath a blanket. You do not lift it. Outside, the city groans. You hear distant crashes, glass breaking, a generator, worry, then sputtering out. These were once beacons of progress, hubs of global exchange, commerce, finance, innovation. But none of that can exist without basic sanitation. Meetings do not happen when the conference room reeks. Trade collapses when goods are handled by hands smeared with infection. Restaurants vanish when food cannot be kept free of flies. What's left are towering mausoleums filled with ghosts and garbage. The subway still runs, barely. You descend into it, hoping for shelter, but the tunnel is half flooded. The water is black, slick with oil and other fluids. On the platform, a crowd gathers near a makeshift filtration system, scraps of charcoal and cloth wrapped in plastic. A man scoops the filtered liquid into bottles and hands them to people in exchange for coins, batteries, or pieces of soap. You listen to the conversations. People are not talking about jobs or relationships. They speak only of how to stay alive another day. No one asks what happened to the city. They all know. You learn that municipal services failed years ago. The sanitation department collapsed after most workers died in an outbreak traced to a burst sewage main. No backups, no workers, no robots. Even the wealthy could not escape. High-rises had luxury systems, but without external maintenance, those too failed. Waste began to seep between floors, turning penthouses into traps. What happened next was inevitable. Riots, resource wars. People fought over portable filtration units, bleach, even old copies of plumbing manuals, desperate to rebuild what history never gave them. But without the foundation of plumbing infrastructure, everything failed. The city did not burn in fire. It drowned in its own filth. You climb to a rooftop for air. The view is surreal. On the skyline, buildings rise into smog, looking majestic and dead at the same time. But what horrifies you is what lies between them. Rivers of sewage winding through the concrete arteries of the metropolis. From this height, you can see the paths carved out by decades of human waste, now baked into the very geography of the city. The map of civilization has been redrawn, not by architects, but by excrement. You look to the edge of the rooftop and see a group of survivors. They huddle around a small garden, an attempt at growing food in planters using salvaged soil, but it's contaminated. You see the plants wilting, their leaves blotched with disease. The water they use comes from collected rain that has passed through the dirty air. Everything is poisoned. A young girl approaches you. Her hands are stained, but she doesn't seem sick. She offers you a piece of fruit. You hesitate. It might be the only gesture of kindness you've received in this world. But as she smiles, you see sores at the corner of her mouth. Infection. You gently refuse, and her smile fades. You feel like a monster, but you also know to survive here is to refuse everything. You try to find a way out of the city. You take roads that lead toward its outer edge, past factories now silent, past schools now empty. Education, economy, government, they all fell when the toilet was never invented. Sanitation is not a luxury. It is the cornerstone of everything. Without it, even the most advanced cities collapse into chaos. And now you understand. These towers, these streets, these people, they were all betrayed by history's greatest omission. But while the cities collapse under the weight of their own waste, the world beyond them is not spared. Because nature, too, is drowning in what humanity could never contain. And when rivers become sewers and oceans turn black, the earth itself begins to reject its tenants. The road out of the city leads you into the countryside, but it offers no comfort. The idea of escaping the filth seems laughable now. You once believed that if humanity failed, nature would reclaim its place, that trees would regrow, rivers would run clean, animals would return. But what greets you is not the serenity of untouched earth. It is a planet poisoned by the very species it once nourished. You step off the cracked pavement and walk through what was once farmland. The soil beneath your boots is blackened, greasy, soft in places where it should be firm. The air is damp, but it carries no freshness, only the musty tang of decay. Flies hover in lazy spirals, no longer bothering to chase food. Everything smells like wet compost mixed with human rot. This land used to grow food, but now only patches of gnarled weeds break the surface. You kneel beside one, trying to understand. The roots are malformed. When you lift a clump of dirt, you find it crawling with parasites, maggots, worms, beetles swollen from feeding on centuries of untreated human waste. There is no filtration here. There are no composting efforts, no recycling of nutrients, only contamination. The earth has become a saturated sponge of feces and chemicals. And like a sponge too full, it has started to drip. You reach a river. Its surface gleams in the sun, not with clarity, but with a rainbow sheen of biological film and synthetic runoff. It no longer flows, it creeps, sluggish, bubbling in places. The banks are lined with waste, not garbage, but raw human excrement. You stare at the water in disbelief. You hear it before you smell it. Burps of gas from rotting layers below. A dead dog floats downstream, bloated and eyeless. Farther along, you see someone squatting directly over the current, using it the way millions do, out of necessity, not choice. You begin to follow the river, and soon it opens into a marshland that was never supposed to exist. What was once forest has become a toxic swamp. Trees stand like skeletons, their bark stripped away, their leaves gone. Pools of dark water stretch between their roots, where birds once nested. Now, only mosquitoes swarm in their place. The sound of buzzing becomes constant, maddening. You slap at your skin, but they're already feeding. In this world, the wetlands are not cradles of biodiversity. They are breeding grounds for disease. You try to find higher ground, but even the hills have been stained. Rain carries everything downhill. And here, where the streams should have cut clean through stone and soil, the runoff from centuries of waste has turned every valley into a septic basin. The sky begins to shift. Gray clouds roll in, and with them comes rain. You brace for cold water to wash some of the filth from your skin. But what falls is acidic, greasy. It stings your eyes. You run for cover beneath a cluster of trees, only to find their trunks slick with a black moss that leaves residue on your fingers. The planet has not healed in humanity's absence of sanitation. It has suffered. It has absorbed our waste until it could absorb no more. The ecosystem is collapsing. Insects flourish, but the food chain above them is unraveling. The fish are gone. The birds are dying. Animals who drink from the rivers grow tumors and miscarry their young. Predators vanish. Even the scavengers are fewer now, poisoned by what they feed on. You find a farming village deep in the hills and approach it with hope. The people here have tried to return to simpler ways. They grow their own food, collect rainwater, live in wooden houses, but they, too, are dying. The ground they till is toxic. Crops sprout with lesions and deformities. Chickens peck at contaminated soil, lay eggs that reek of sulfur. The village elders tell you they have tried everything, burying waste, burning it, praying over it. But without understanding, without infrastructure, they only moved the problem around. One elder offers you a seat and pours you tea. You hesitate, but accept. The cup is made of bamboo, the liquid dark and bitter. He speaks slowly, explaining how each generation passed on tricks to survive, but never the solution. He says the young ones dream of leaving the village, going to the city. You try not to laugh. There is nothing in the city for them, only more death, more disease. He looks into your eyes, and for a moment, you see something terrifying. Resignation. They no longer believe the world can be saved. They simply want to endure as long as possible. As you leave the village, you pass fields where children dig with sticks, trying to find roots or insects to eat. A dog follows them, its ribs visible, its eyes clouded. You feel a weight pressing into your chest, not from guilt, but from futility. There is nowhere to go. No untouched wilderness, no clean ocean. Even the wind carries traces of what mankind has stumped upon this earth. What began as the absence of a single invention became the unraveling of every living system. You finally reach the coastline. Waves crash against jagged rocks, but there is no salt in the air, only rot. The beach is layered in foam and plastic and waste. Dead fish litter the sand. Their eyes popped, their skin split. The water is warm, too warm, a result of climate change, yes, but also of pollution, biological activity in the form of mass microbial blooms. The ocean is no longer blue. It is grayish-green, opaque, slow. You step into it and instantly feel something brush against your leg. Soft, gelatinous. You look down and see dozens of bloated masses bobbing in the water. You cannot tell if they're sea creatures or corpses. You turn away, and for the first time, you begin to understand something deeper. Nature is not your ally, not anymore. It gave humans time to adapt, to innovate, to correct course. But when the toilet was never invented, that chance disappeared. And now the earth, once forgiving, has turned. It is not violent. It is not vengeful. It is indifferent. It rejects you passively, by letting you poison yourself, by withdrawing the resources you abused, by letting everything rot in place. The planet is not ending in flames. It is ending in silence, stink, and slow death. You stumble back toward the inland hills, avoiding the water, avoiding the wind, avoiding the truth you now carry with you. This world is not survivable, not because it is dramatic, but because it is inevitable, because there is no balance left. And as you leave the wasteland behind and enter what passes for society, you find that something more insidious has decayed than just the ground beneath your feet. In a world without toilets, it is not only the environment that collapses, but also the soul of humanity itself. You arrive at the edge of a settlement built into the ruins of what used to be a school. Concrete walls, cracked and sagging, form the perimeter. Barbed wire winds loosely along the top, but it isn't meant to keep anyone out. It's a relic of a time when people thought disease had borders. Inside, the former classrooms have been converted into communal sleeping quarters. Privacy does not exist here. Blankets hang between cots in a half-hearted attempt to create space. But the constant noise of groaning, coughing, and movement ensures no one truly sleeps alone. You are given a place near the back, a wooden pallet, and a shredded mat. The person beside you is an old woman who rocks back and forth, mumbling to herself. You cannot understand her words, but the tone is unmistakable. She's not praying, she's trying to forget. Her hands tremble constantly. You notice that she wipes them on the fabric of her dress every few minutes, though there is nothing on them. It's a tic, a leftover behavior from someone who once believed cleanliness was possible. There is a designated area in the corner of the compound, marked by nothing more than a circle of stones, where people relieve themselves. It is within sight of the sleeping quarters. You force yourself not to look when others walk there, but you feel it anyway. The total erosion of privacy. There are no stalls, no doors, no shame. Children squat openly. Adults stare blankly into space as they go. No one flinches. And that, more than anything, breaks you. You thought dignity was innate, something all humans clung to, even in death. But here, where waste is constant and uncontainable, dignity is one of the first things to rot. You see it in how people avoid eye contact, how they stop covering themselves, how laughter has been replaced by a flat, vacant silence. Emotion is a luxury they can no longer afford. The smell, ever present, becomes more than a nuisance. It becomes a psychological weight, a constant reminder that no matter where you go or who you are always covered in something you cannot remove. You wander through the compound, observing how the absence of sanitation has reshaped every aspect of life. Meals are eaten in silence, because the aroma of human waste is stronger than the food. There is no romance, no courting, no intimacy. The body is no longer sacred. It is a leaking, sickly vessel, and everyone is too busy managing their own decay to care about anyone else's. Children do not play. They dig, scavenge. Watch, you see a boy dragging a rusted metal can filled with murky water to a corner where two girls are squatting, trying to clean their feet, but their hands are filthy. The water becomes darker with every splash. They give up halfway through and let their feet dry as they are. One begins to cry quietly, and the boy tries to cheer her up by making a face. She doesn't respond. He stops trying. You realize these are the only children you've seen all day, and none of them have smiled. In the evenings, a communal gathering is held, not for ritual or hope, but for logistics. Who will bury the dead? Who will clean the stone circle? Who will fetch water from the nearby stream, even though everyone knows it's polluted? No one volunteers. The tasks are rotated, forced, unavoidable. As names are called, you notice people staring at their feet, not from shyness, but from despair. Every job is a risk. Every movement, a potential death sentence. You speak to a man who once worked in what passed for administration here. He tells you that early on, they tried to build latrines, dug pits, posted guards, created schedules, but it didn't last. The pits filled. The guards got sick. The schedules broke down when people began to die too quickly. Then came the panic, when hundreds of people use the same space for waste. The air itself becomes dangerous. And once the first sickness hit, people began using every corner they could find. Floors, buckets, beds. The compound became a septic chamber. The disease never left. They never tried to rebuild. He explains how people change when they're forced to live in filth. At first, they resist. They cover their noses, try to find cleaner spots, wash obsessively. But then, the fatigue sets in. The realization that no amount of scrubbing makes a difference. That the air cannot be filtered. That the flies will always find you. And then, slowly, people give up. Not just on cleanliness, but on themselves. They stop speaking in full sentences. Stop dreaming. You feel it happening to you. You've been in this world too long. The smell no longer shocks you. The sight of someone defecating in public no longer enrages you. It simply is. You haven't eaten in 2 days, not because there is no food, but because every bite you take tastes like the environment around you. You've begun scratching at your skin. It itches constantly. You feel dirt beneath your fingernails, in your mouth, behind your eyes. You want to scream, but no one else does. In the far corner of the compound, there is a woman who speaks to no one. She lives alone in what used to be a janitor's closet. Her eyes are wide, her movements erratic. People say she used to be a teacher, that she broke when her own daughter died from a simple infection. She believes the compound is a prison and that everyone inside is already dead. She wears a necklace made of buttons and bones and whispers to it at night. You realize that while many have succumbed to disease, more have lost their minds long before their bodies failed. This world does not just rot flesh, it rots identity. Without boundaries, without rituals of hygiene, the line between animal and human fades. You begin to wonder if it even matters anymore. When survival becomes a matter of avoiding your own waste, there is no time for purpose, no time for beauty, no time for kindness. You sit by a broken window and look out over the hills. The sun is setting, but the sky is stained with smoke and haze. You remember sunsets that smelled of rain, of fresh grass, of warmth. But here, everything smells like death in slow motion. You think of your own timeline, your real world, and you wonder how close it ever came to this. You wonder how many lives were saved, how much civilization owes to a single porcelain bowl and the pipes beneath it. But while dignity erodes and minds unravel in this cesspool of despair, there's something even more visceral that cannot be escaped: the sheer, overwhelming assault on the senses. Because in this world, you are never clean, never safe, and never free from the stench that follows you everywhere. The air follows you like a predator. It clings to your skin, soaks into your clothes, burrows into your hair. You try to breathe through your mouth, but the particles are too fine. They settle on your tongue. Even when you find clean air, if such a thing exists anymore, you carry the stench with you. It radiates from your body like heat. It becomes your signature. And everyone around you has one too. You are in a crowded settlement now. The structures are slightly more advanced. Metal frames and synthetic fabric stretched over scaffolding. A makeshift refuge for those who fled collapsing cities. But the stink is no less brutal. It hits you before you even step inside. An invisible wave of rotting waste, unwashed skin, mold, and despair. You gag, but no one else reacts. They've adapted, or maybe they've given up noticing. Everywhere you go, smell becomes the dominant sense. It replaces speech. It replaces sight. A person's identity, their social role, their place in the world, it's all determined by how they smell. There is no perfume, no soap, no rituals of washing. Hygiene is a forgotten language. The idea of being clean is now a myth passed down in stories like flying cars or eternal youth. Children laugh when elders talk about showers. They think it was fiction. They've never felt water without color. You sit among them, desperate for a moment of connection. But even here, in the heart of a settlement meant to provide shelter, the smell is suffocating. The dirt under your nails is black. Your armpits itch constantly. Your teeth ache. Your breath stinks like decay, and you know it. You smell it even in your sleep, and when you dream, your mind offers no escape. It recreates the stench with cruel precision. You overhear people talking about it like it's weather. The air is heavy today. It's worse than usual. Something must have died nearby, but they never ask why it's like this. They already know. Waste is everywhere. Buried in the floor, trapped in cloth, caked behind ears and under fingernails. No one can remove it. Even when it rains, the moisture only wakes up the rot beneath. You meet a man who once worked in a perfume factory. He tells you how scent used to be an art, a science. Now, he says, all that remains is survival. His nose has been ruined, burned by ammonia, dried by inhaling filth every day for years. He can't smell anything anymore. You walk past a group of teenagers sitting in a circle, comparing infections. They lift their shirts and laugh at the red streaks climbing their torsos, the boils on their backs. One girl lifts her foot, crusted in yellowed skin, and dares the others to touch it. They do. Hygiene is no longer a taboo to be broken. It is a concept so distant it's become meaningless. These children do not expect to live long. They do not plan for adulthood. Their bodies are decaying while they're still young enough to play, and they've normalized it. In this world, mirrors are rare. And when you find one, it's not a gift. It's a curse. You look at your reflection and almost recoil. Your skin has darkened not from sun, but from dirt embedded in every pore. Your eyes are bloodshot, your lips cracked. Your hair mats to your scalp in greasy locks. You don't look like someone who traveled here from another timeline. You look like someone who belongs. The horror of that realization almost brings you to your knees. You try to clean yourself. Desperately, you use a cloth dipped in filtered rainwater. You scrub until your skin burns, but nothing changes. The odor is deeper than surface level. It is inside you now, in your lungs, your breath, your bloodstream. You feel unhuman, and everyone else does too. People walk hunched, shoulders rounded, necks lowered, not just from exhaustion, but from shame so constant they've stopped noticing it. They look at the ground because the idea of facing each other, of being seen in this state, is unbearable. And then There are those who have gone too far. You see a group outside the gates, exiled from the settlement. Their bodies are black with grime. Their teeth are gone. Their eyes sunken. They roll in filth, live in it, worship it. They no longer see themselves as part of human society. They believe the world has become what it was always meant to be, covered in waste, swarming with flies, soaked in infection. They mock you as you walk by, calling you perfume ghost and shiny bones. You understand why, Aqua. You're still trying to hold on to something they've long since buried. And yet, no one talks about fixing the problem. There are no engineers trying to reinvent sanitation. No scientists rediscovering filters or drainage. The knowledge may still exist in books, but the will to use it has rotted along with everything else. The human body was not built for this, and neither was the mind. Over time, you feel yourself fraying, not from hunger, but from exposure. Constant sensory assault, no relief, no retreat, only a slow unraveling. You remember things, random, useless things. The smell of your old soap, lemon and pine, your childhood shampoo, the way your clothes felt when they were clean. It brings tears to your eyes, not because it was beautiful, but because it was simple. You ache for simplicity. You'd trade everything just to scrub your hands with warm water and soap. Just once, but there's no water left that won't kill you. No soap that hasn't been melted down and swallowed by the desperate. No towel that isn't already brown and crusted with the memory of 100 other hands. You begin to understand that this world cannot be saved, not because it lacks resources, but because it has forgotten what clean even means. The stink is not just in the air. It is in the language, the culture, the soul. A child born here does not recoil from filth. They accept it as normal. They internalize it. They become it. And in time, so do you. But as the senses surrender and the body adjusts to constant decay, another reality comes into view, one that's even more disturbing. Because in a world this filthy, even your food and your fashion cannot escape the contamination. And what you eat, what you wear, what you celebrate, all of it begins to rot. You wander into what used to be a market district. The banners are torn, the signage unreadable, but the scent of food still lingers, if you can call it that. Charred meat, rotting produce, the wet hiss of something being cooked over burning plastic. You follow the smell, not because you're hungry, but because it is the first time in days that the odor of human waste isn't the dominant note in the air. But as you round the corner, you realize quickly this isn't a meal. It's survival, stripped bare of ritual or meaning. Vendors squat beside makeshift stalls made from scrap metal and broken shelves. Flies cover every surface. There is no attempt to swat them away. They land on everything. Fish left in the sun, bruised fruits crawling with larvae, bowls of soup with slicks of oil and bits of floating debris. A woman tears a chunk of bread with her hands, dirt embedded in her nails, her fingers raw with infection. She hands the piece to a child who takes it without blinking. You look down and notice the bread is spotted with black mold. They eat it anyway. There are no kitchens here, no closed rooms where food is protected from the world. Everything is cooked and consumed in the open air, which means everything is exposed to the same environment. The same air teeming with bacteria, the same ground soaked with decades of waste. Even when food is washed, it is done in dirty water. A symbolic gesture, not a hygienic one. You remember hearing the phrase, "You are what you eat." In this place, it is a curse. The food is the filth, and so are the people. You try to eat something. A vendor offers you a roasted vegetable. You can't tell what it once was. It's gray and shriveled, the edges charred black. You bite it, and it turns to bitter mush. Your stomach revolts. You gag, trying not to vomit, but it's already happening. You double over in the street, heaving bile. No one reacts. They step around you like water flowing around a rock. This is normal. This is constant. And then there's fashion, or what's left of it. Once, people dressed to express, to protect, to attract. Clothing had meaning. It marked your profession, your role, your mood. But here, clothing is armor against the unclean world, and barely that. Most wear what they can salvage. Layers of synthetic fabric, torn and stained. Nothing matches. Everything is brown. Patterns have faded into stains. The air is so toxic, the rain so acidic, that colors no longer survive. You see people wearing plastic bags wrapped around their feet. Others use old shirts as diapers. A man wears a coat made of stitched-together curtains, its floral print now ghostly against grime. There is no concept of laundry. There are no laundromats, no soaps, no clean water. Clothing is worn until it decays, then repurposed. Old pants become scarves. Blankets become capes. Nothing is thrown away because nothing is clean enough to matter. The smell of clothing is unbearable, not just yours. Everyone's. Fabric holds memory, and here, that memory is feces, sweat, mold, and fear. You keep your distance instinctively, but it doesn't help. When two people pass each other, the mingling of their odors is overwhelming. You've seen more than one person collapse after a prolonged exposure. Their noses don't just detect the scent, they absorb it, and the body begins to break down. And yet, even in this ruin, remnants of culture remain. There are still gatherings, still music. You attend a celebration, a rite of passage for a young boy entering manhood. In your world, such a ceremony might involve speeches, laughter, perhaps even a cake. Here, it involves endurance. The boy is made to sit in a pit of waste for 6 hours. It is symbolic, they say, a reminder that life begins and ends in filth. He does not cry, he does not scream. When he emerges, he is declared ready. Everyone cheers. You feel your stomach turn again. Another ritual involves burning waste to appease ancestral spirits. The smoke curls into the sky, black and chemical, filling the lungs of all who stand nearby. You hear them sing, and for a moment, the melody almost sounds beautiful. But then the wind shifts, and the smell chokes the music back into silence. You see paintings on crumbling walls, abstract figures made from mud and blood and charcoal. They depict people squatting, people vomiting, people dying. One mural shows a god, a massive figure made of waste, towering over a ruined city. You ask about it. The locals call it the giver. It brings both death and life. They worship it, not out of love, but out of necessity. It represents the force that governs their lives now. Not a creator, not a destroyer, just a presence. Even language has changed. New words exist for types of filth. There is a word for the smell that comes after a rainstorm mixes with days-old feces. A word for the film of grease that covers skin after washing in gray water. A word for the moment when someone stops caring. You hear that word used often, and fashion adapts to these new cultural values. People wear their contamination as a kind of proof of survival, of resilience, of descent. A man boasts about a stain he has worn for 3 winters. A woman ties a cloth around her wrist that once belonged to a plague victim. Her friends touch it with reverence. Purity, once a virtue, is now a weakness. To be clean is to be disconnected from the truth of this world. And no one survives disconnected. You try to imagine how music was made before, how people danced, how food tasted, how clothes felt. But the memories are fading. The longer you stay, the more your senses dull. You begin to accept the scent. You forget the feeling of clean fabric. You no longer crave flavor, only calories. And that is the most terrifying part. Culture has not died. It has mutated into something born from rot, carried by flies, soaked in decay. A reflection not of what humanity dreamed of becoming, but what it settled for when the foundation crumbled. You realize now that the toilet wasn't just an invention, it was a boundary, a line between what is human and what is base, between celebration and survival. between memory and madness. And as you stagger from the marketplace, dazed by the rot of food and the collapse of beauty, you head toward what should be the one place untouched by this decay, the hospital. But when even modern medicine falls to filth, your chances of survival become almost non-existent. You approach the hospital slowly, already knowing it will not be what you hope. The building is tall, or it used to be. Its outer walls are stained with streaks of brown and black, the windows clouded over with grime. The once pristine symbol of a red cross above the main entrance is faded and warped. As you cross the threshold, a foul gust of warmth hits you like a wall. The interior smells like wet bandages, rot, and human waste. Inside, the waiting room is full, but no one is sitting. Every surface is coated in filth. People stand along the walls, pressed against one another, their eyes dull and sunken. Some moan softly, clutching at bloated stomachs or cracked lips. Others are silent, swaying gently as if trying not to fall. Children sleep on the floor beside pools of vomit. A young man bleeds openly from his foot, a metal rod protruding through the flesh. No one tends to him. There is no one left to help. You make your way deeper, weaving through the crowd. Each step is sticky. The floor was once tiled, but now it's covered in layers of gauze, tissue, and decay. You pass an empty reception desk. The monitor is broken, and the drawers have been ransacked. A chart lies open on the counter, listing a dozen patients with only one word written beside their names: expired. The hallways are dim, lit only by flickering emergency lights. There is a room to your right that was once a maternity ward. You step inside and immediately regret it. The beds are rusted. The sheets are soaked through with bodily fluids. One bed still holds the collapsed shape of a woman who appears to have died mid-labor. Her arms cradle a bundle, too still, too quiet. You back away slowly. Farther in, you reach the emergency wing, or what's left of it. Makeshift beds line both sides of the corridor, occupied by patients with symptoms too advanced to describe. Limbs swollen with infection, eyes crusted shut, breathing so shallow you question whether they're still alive. Some have handwritten signs pinned to their chests with scraps of tape. Don't touch. Burn after death. Leave me. A single nurse moves among them. She wears no gloves. Her mask is a strip of cloth tied behind her head. Her hands are red from scrubbing. Her movements are efficient, detached. She injects something into a woman's arm, wipes another's face, then moves on. You try to speak to her. She ignores you at first, but then glances up with eyes that scream exhaustion. She tells you they ran out of antibiotics 2 weeks ago. The water lines are contaminated. Most of the staff either fled or died. She is the only one left on this floor. She leads you into what used to be an operating theater. The lights above the table are dark. Surgical tools sit in a metal tray filled with yellow liquid. A man lies on the table. Mid-procedure, his stomach open, intestines exposed to the air. There's no antiseptic, no sterile drape, no monitors beeping. Just the sound of his shallow breathing and the distant hum of flies. She tells you they operate without anesthesia now. Not because they're cruel, but because there's none left. Most patients die on the table. She calls it mercy. You ask why they continue. Why not shut the doors and let the hospital fade like everything else? She shrugs. Says some people still believe in saving lives. She's not one of them anymore. She does it out of inertia, out of guilt, out of a duty that stopped being noble and became a curse. You hear a crash from somewhere below. The basement. She warns you not to go. Says it's where they dump the bodies now. Refrigeration failed months ago. There's no fuel for cremation. Burial space is gone. So they pile them in the old storage units, seal the doors, and pray the smell doesn't rise too high. You go anyway. The staircase down is slick. The air grows heavier, thicker. It feels like breathing through a damp rag. When you reach the bottom, you have to push the door open with your entire body. It sticks, reluctant to reveal what waits behind it. The room is dark, but your eyes adjust quickly. Stacks of corpses wrapped in blood-soaked sheets reach almost to the ceiling. Some have burst open. Some are rotting through the cloth. Rats scurry between them. The floor is wet. You cannot tell if it's water, blood, or worse. This is the result of medicine without sanitation. It doesn't matter how skilled your surgeons are, how advanced your drugs, how cutting-edge your equipment. If you cannot keep a wound clean, it will fester. If you cannot wash your hands, you will become the disease. If your hospitals are filled with human waste, they do not heal. They kill. You return to the upper floors in silence, feeling sicker than you did when you arrived. The nurse has disappeared. You are alone now. You pass through corridors of misery and step once more into the open air. But there is no relief waiting for you. Only the realization that healing is no longer part of this world. The systems that once held illness at bay have been buried beneath centuries of filth. There are no sterile tools, no recovery rooms, no clean bandages, no soap, no hope. You pass a man limping down the street with a bone sticking out of his leg. He will die. You know it. Everyone knows it. But no one has the resources or the strength to help him. In this world, pain is normal. Infection is expected. Death is the closest thing to rest. You understand now that medicine was never about pills or doctors. It was about structure. It was about the ability to keep clean, to isolate, to prevent. It was the invisible force behind every recovery. Without it, the miracles rot. And so does everyone who hoped for them. And as the illusion of healing fades, and your body begins to betray you, you realize there's no innovation, no progress, no future. Because in a world without sanitation, even the greatest inventions are nothing more than rusted dreams. Technology suffocating in its own waste. You expected the tech district to be different. Cleaner, maybe, more advanced. You thought perhaps the engineers had found a way to rise above it all, to seal themselves off from the filth and keep progress alive behind armored doors. But as you walk through the rusted gates of what was once a hub of innovation, you realize your hope was misplaced. The buildings are still here. Concrete blocks with solar panels. Server farms buried deep underground. But the silence tells the story. The hum of power has died. The lights no longer blink. A drone lies in the street. Its rotors snapped. Its camera lens shattered and crusted with grime. Beside it, a broken charging station oozes brown sludge. The metal is corroded. Wires have been chewed through by rats. Screens that once projected global stock updates and scientific breakthroughs are cracked. The glass spiderwebbed with impact scars. Someone has scrawled a message across one of them in feces and ash. Clean minds died with clean hands. Inside a data center, once the beating heart of this region, the servers are offline. The air conditioning units failed long ago. The heat killed everything. Mold crawls up the racks in streaks of green and black. Keyboards lie buried under layers of dust and dried bodily fluids. There is a faint buzzing sound, but it's not electricity. It's flies. You find an engineer, or at least what remains of one. He sits hunched over a cracked monitor, trying to repair it with a rusted screwdriver and a set of fingernail clippers. His hands shake. His face is gaunt. His clothes are tattered. His lab coat stained so dark you can't tell what color it once was. He tells you in a hoarse whisper that innovation doesn't matter anymore. Not when machines can't be cleaned. Not when touchscreens are smeared with bacteria and keyboards spread infection faster than any handshake. He shows you a prototype, a water purifier the size of a backpack, once hailed as a potential miracle. It sits now on the floor, clogged with filth. Its filters long since blackened. He opens the panel and gags from the smell. He drops it and doesn't bother picking it up. Everything breaks here, he says. Everything gets infected. Then he tells you something that chills your blood. Progress needs hygiene more than it needs genius. You visit what used to be a university. Ivy climbs the walls, but not with beauty. It suffocates windows, tangles around door frames, clings to decay. Inside, the lecture halls are silent. Desks have been pushed into corners to make space for cots. Students sleep on the floors. The whiteboards are smeared with formulas, but newer messages, warnings, surrender notes. Lists of the dead have been written over them. The once curious minds here no longer debate quantum theory. They argue over who used the last bucket of potable water. In the research labs, vials have burst. Chemicals mixed without guidance. One corner of the facility is sealed off with a warning. Do not enter mutagenic spill. You peek inside anyway. The air burns your throat. The walls are blistered. A rat lies twitching in the corner, its skin peeled back from its spine. This is what science becomes when sanitation is forgotten. A petri dish for death. The tech you once took for granted is now useless. Smartphones can't be handled when every touch spreads disease. Keypads are vectors, styluses, charging cables. They're all crawling with bacteria. In a world where nothing is clean, every object becomes dangerous. And so, people begin to abandon it. Bit by bit, they let it go. You find a man burying a laptop in a shallow grave. He tells you he's lost 3 children. They caught an illness from a shared VR headset at a learning center. The foam, the straps, the ports, all touched, all contaminated. He no longer believes in technology. To him, every device is cursed, a relic of arrogance. He plants a wooden marker at the head of the laptop grave. On it is a single word: plague. Transportation has collapsed, too. Autonomous cars jam the highways, abandoned mid-route when their passengers succumbed to diarrhea or fever. The interiors are soaked, sealed by safety locks that no one could override. You pass rows of buses, turned into mobile hospitals, then into morgues. Now they sit, rusted on their axles, wheels sunken into mud. Even space travel is finished. You find a satellite control center buried beneath a hill. Inside, screens flash error messages in half a dozen languages. The staff is gone. The toilets in the facility overflowed, flooding the server rooms. Satellites fell from orbit without human intervention. A small placard still hangs on the wall. Our future is among the stars. You look at it and feel something cold settle in your chest. The stars are too far away. Invention requires more than intelligence. It requires stability, infrastructure, health, and all of those things rot the moment sanitation is removed. The electric age, the digital age, even the steam age, none of it could begin without clean water and a place to put waste. Without that, wires are just metal. Screens are just glass. Robots are just expensive trash. You walk into a classroom, abandoned but not forgotten. The chalkboard has a message scrawled in tight handwriting. What's the point of learning when the toilet never came? It hits harder than you expected. Because now, finally, you understand. Without toilets, there were no laboratories, no sterile workspaces, no disease-free minds. And the children, though still born at all, no longer dream of the future. They do not draw rockets or robots. They draw flies, rats, and outhouses that never were. They believe the world was always like this, that humans were never meant to leave the ground, that progress is a fairy tale. You pick up a device, maybe a tablet, maybe a diagnostic scanner, and try to turn it on. It lights up for a moment, a soft glow in the gloom. Then it sparks, shorts, and dies. The final breath of a dying world that once tried to be brilliant. But as the machines fail and knowledge slips into oblivion, something more ancient begins to stir. The desperate instinct to rebuild, to survive. And in the final moments of this unraveling world, humanity makes one last, frantic attempt to reinvent what should have existed all along. You walk into the mountains where the air is thinner and the scent of rot is dulled by the wind. Down below, the world continues to decay. Cities strangled by their own waste, rivers thick with disease. The land sunken under generations of filth. But up here, high above the collapse, something stirs, a whisper of movement, an echo of purpose. You find the entrance hidden beneath brush and rubble, reinforced doors sealed with steel plates and old caution signs. A symbol is carved into the stone above. Not a flag, not a cross, but the outline of a water droplet cradled in a hand. This is what remains of the final attempt. The door creaks open slowly. Inside, it's cold and dim. Solar panels power faint LED strips that run along the walls. The smell is not fresh, but it is bearable. You descend into the bunker, one of the last places on Earth where scientists, engineers, and survivors once gathered to try and save the human race from itself. Not with war machines or pharmaceuticals, but with sanitation. You meet them in fragments, recordings, notes, diagrams on the walls. The last generation of minds who understood that the key to survival was never in the stars, but in the soil, in the water, in the disposal of waste. They were engineers of the most basic kind. Their dream was not glory. It was flushing toilets contained sewage, water filters that didn't clog in a week. They knew that without these, nothing else mattered. There are 3 chambers. One is a research lab filled with prototypes of composting systems, UV waste, sterilizers, chemical treatment barrels made from scrap. Many are non-functional now. Corrosion has eaten into the wires. Dust has gathered in the tubing. But you can see the ingenuity, desperate, raw, brilliant. They built what the world forgot. Safe places to defecate. Simple systems to keep water from turning to poison. The second chamber is a library, not of books, but of instruction. Thousands of laminated diagrams, etched metal plates, and digitally preserved manuals. Everything from how to dig a latrine to how to manage a gray water system for an off-grid home. Instructions in dozens of languages, illustrated for children, waterproofed, mass-producible. These were meant to be scattered across the world, handed to every surviving village, tribe, settlement. But the timing was too late. Distribution routes collapsed. Printing facilities burned. Drones never arrived. And the documents stayed here, untouched. The final chamber is darker. Here, a long table sits under the soft glow of ceiling lights. Around it are chairs, some empty, some still occupied, skeletons in lab coats. Their skulls resting against the metal as if they simply fell asleep. There is a recording console at the head of the table. You press play. A woman's voice fills the room, soft, tired, but clear. If you're hearing this, then we failed. We thought we could fix it. But we were already buried in it. The waste was too deep. The systems had collapsed too far. People stopped believing in clean. Stopped trying. Stopped listening. So we tried to preserve the knowledge for whoever comes next. If anyone ever comes next, the message ends there. No grand farewell, no orchestral swell, just silence. You sit for a long time. Eventually, you gather what you can. A small booklet sealed in plastic, a hand pump purifier, a diagram for a compost toilet drawn in ink so faded it looks like a memory. You leave the bunker and descend the mountain, returning to a world that has stopped listening to itself. A world deaf to reason, blind to filth, numb to its own rot. You find a child on the outskirts of a ruined town. Her face is streaked with soot, but her eyes are alert. She asks what you carry. You show her. She touches the booklet like it's sacred. You don't say anything. Words don't matter here. Not anymore. Later, as the sun bleeds into a sky smeared with smoke, and the wind carries the scent of everything lost, you sit by a dry well and open the pages. You begin to dig. not for water, not for food, but for a place to begin again. A hole in the ground. A place to separate the living from the waste. The first invention, the last hope. Because in the end, it wasn't a war, a bomb, or a virus that brought humanity to its knees. It was the thing we thought was too basic to matter. The one invention we never made. And in its absence, everything else fell. You are back. The immersion ends. Your body still trembles. Your clothes still feel dirty. And your skin itches with memory. The simulation is over, but the sensation is not. You remember every step, every stench, every plea for help that was never answered. You remember how easily civilization collapsed, not because of war or famine, but because humanity never took the time to solve something fundamental. A place to go, a way to stay clean. You realize now what kept your world together wasn't its skyscrapers, satellites, or smartphones. It was the plumbing beneath your feet. The systems no one talks about. And when they never existed to begin with, you saw the outcome firsthand. Rot without end. Minds unraveling. Bodies breaking. Cities collapsing inward like infected wounds. The toilet was never just porcelain and water. It was the boundary between chaos and control, between progress and plague, between being human and being doomed. This wasn't a horror story. If this journey made you see civilization differently, if it made you question what progress really means, or if it just made you grateful for the smallest things you've taken for granted, then hit like, subscribe, and share this video with someone who thinks the future is only built on screens and machines. Sometimes survival starts with a hole in the ground and the will to use it right. Let us know in the comments, what's the one invisible invention you couldn't live without? And remember, it's not always the biggest inventions that save humanity. Sometimes it's the dirtiest ones.